Hey, this video is about opioid withdrawal. I guess you could say just like any type of withdrawal. But what I'm talking about in particular is what I went through and the tips and tricks that I used to get through all the withdrawals that I went through. Um, and each withdrawal I went through with opiates, I finished them to the end, but I had to keep taking them. So I wrote a thing here. Let me see here. Okay, I'd like to share with you how I managed to get through many withdrawals. Why isn't this? This video isn't professional advice. Let me share with you the strategies that I've learned over a 20-year period, the hard way. Let me give you my background first. Opiates aren't the only drug I have withdrawn from. I was addicted to benzos for 15 years. They were therapeutic at first, but after attempting to come off them, that triggered me to use more benzos, and that's how it started. For the benzos, and I say 10 years, and 15 years, I went through more than 150 small withdrawals from excessive use. In those 10 years, I came off the benzos therapeutic dose as well, and that was different. And it lasted for each one of them. Each time I did it, it lasted a year of withdrawal. Personally, I found benzos much more difficult to stop than the opiates for different reasons. They both had their unwanted withdrawal signs and symptoms. First and foremost, I'd recommend lowering your dose in increments, like I would. As I said, I'm not professional, so check with your doctor on how to do it properly. This is more about how I use strategies to get through the symptoms of withdrawal. In 20 years, I came off opiates 112 times. So for each of those, I believe it was every single time I finished it right to the end. Each withdrawal, I finished it to its end. I suffer with severe pain, and it was necessary to do it because of specific issues I have in my abdomen. Opioid withdrawal can be a humbling and painful experience. Some people choose to use an in-between drug like buprenorphine or Suboxone for the withdrawal. That might cause you to stay on an opiate. The way I chose to do it for my withdrawals, I don't recommend. I'm just giving you for me, they were effective to do it acutely and necessary for me, if you can tolerate that. I chose to do my withdrawals acutely. Okay, sorry. The reason I did that was to get over the withdrawal sooner. I wasn't in a place for a long and drawn-out withdrawal. I make this video because I know withdrawal symptoms in their full power. More than 5 full years of my life was spent. So in total, I spent 5 years worth of days in a pure withdrawal state. It was probably longer than that. First, I'll share the withdrawal symptoms I would experience. For me, it didn't seem to matter which opiate it was. They all had the same symptoms for me, but each drug varied as far as intensity of symptoms and the length of the withdrawal. The types of opiates that I withdrew from were methadone, Oxycontin, morphine, Tylenol 3 and 4, oxycodone, Suboxone, and others. Because I did it acutely, I needed to choose when to have my last dose. I did it 2 different ways. I would get the best sleep that I could, so that when I woke up, I would be refreshed, and I would already be 10 hours or so into the withdrawal since my last dose. So 10 hours is 10 hours, right? take your last dose at night and you wake up, hey, have a 12-hour sleep, get up, it counts. I would count the time in my withdrawals. And already being 10 hours into the withdrawal without lifting a finger was one way. My other approach was to take the first dose of the day and go from there. The way that way you could make it through the day with some pain-killing properties left in your system and get a good feel of how it might be, the withdrawal, as it starts to build throughout that day. I take painkillers for severe and acute pain. Everyone has different issues. Because I suffer with pain, one of my first symptoms that would appear would be pain. My pain conditions would intensify a little at first. Another one of the first symptoms that would appear would be yawning, tearing eyes, and anxiety. My body would start to ache in areas that they wouldn't regularly, in my joints. The first day would be more about anxiety and a general aching of the body, and an overall sense of like a general feeling of unwellness. One of my first strategies was to make sure to get the best rest possible on that first night's sleep. If you already take a sleep medication, all the better. I suggest you do what you can to get as much sleep in the first phase as you can. Like, that's paramount. You'll need it. Usually my sleep with the use of a sleep medication was okay. I would get a good sleep that first night if using a sleep aid. After waking on the second day, I could tell immediately that something was wrong. The symptoms that were in the first day, in the second day, were intensified. Like I said, people take them for different reasons. For me, the general aches and pains would get worse, as would my regular pain conditions. My anxiety would be more pronounced on the second day. My heart rate, my pulse would increase along with my breathing rate. One of the reasons for getting a good night's sleep is so you don't have to fight these symptoms and exhaustion at the start. The long-acting opiates tended to have a longer withdrawal, such as methadone. So methadone, I did that 3 times, and that was extremely tough. Like acute symptoms, the acute phase would last 2 weeks, versus the other maybe about 7 or 8 days. As the day would go on, the symptoms would get worse. For me, the restlessness would start late on the second day. As far as any symptom, restlessness was the one I hated the most. I'm gonna check, make sure this is recording still. I always do this. As far as any symptom, restlessness was the one I hated most. For the second night's rest, I would take my sleeping medication again. I'd take it every night, and I would make sure it was at a good time to keep a schedule and see how much sleep I could get. I'll give my strategy after my symptom explanation. This is where I'd find myself in trouble. About halfway through my sleep, I would wake up. I'd find myself agitated, and this is where my restlessness would really begin. In most of my short-acting withdrawals, I would go through 3 or 4 maximum phases and waves of restlessness, and these waves are intolerable, especially the 3rd and 4th one. Each subsequent phase of restlessness would be more powerful than the last. My symptoms would become intense by the middle of that day. So eating would be difficult, but it completely necessary. Nausea or vomiting, diarrhea might occur. I'd find myself pacing around a lot and smoking many cigarettes. That was more at the beginning when I didn't have a spinal condition, or when it got bad. So cigarettes, which I don't recommend unless you must. So if you're in withdrawal, benzos or opiates, it intensifies restlessness, as does sugar and shit foods. But hey, if you need it right and if it gets you through and that's what you're doing, but that's what the way it was for me and probably a lot of other people. By the end of the second day, my bones, muscles, and joints are painful, and I'd do anything to relieve them, such as Tylenol, a bath, a heating pad. Make sure to keep your hydration up. Make sure to keep your hydration up, believe me. Or you'll only get more cramps in your legs, restless legs syndrome, and tiredness. You might find yourself in cold and hot sweats on this day. When my second day was over, I would take my sleep meds again and hope for the best. It was the same thing for me through those 112 withdrawals. I would wake at 2 or 3 in the morning. So after my second sleep, I'd wake up, this is like the third day, I'd wake up like 2, 3 a.m. In the morning in cold and hot sweats. The restlessness by that point was acute. It was intolerable. Unfortunately, in my case, my withdrawals were done, a lot of them were done in a bed or a couch because of immobility. Pretty scary when you have to do it in a bed and stay in a bed. My neck and shoulders would hurt, my hips, rolling back and forth my bed. I'd need a few baths per day to release tension. There's a lot of restlessness on day 3. Abdominal pain was quite prevalent, along with low back pain. The reason for getting a good sleep in the beginning is to fight the ferocity of this third day. It matters in the long run. If opiates were causing constipation, it would probably resolve by now. If you're lucky enough, you might get a microsleep from the exhaustion. There's good reason for the phrase kicking the habit. You might be tapping your fingers, your legs, walking on the spot, swaying, rocking back and forth, kicking the habit, right? That's where it comes from. Some people call this restlessness akathisia, but I mostly don't agree, but I kind of do. This is an argument. I don't think that'll be solved anytime soon. I've experienced both acute akathisia, and they almost feel the same. It's possible, I could be wrong, it's not proven. In my experience, the 4th and 5th days of withdrawal from the shorter acting opiates are the mirror of the 3rd day, but much more intense. The waves of restlessness and cold and hot sweats are severe. Trying to stay still is near impossible. Make sure to drink what you're losing through urination. Drinking and peeing more won't speed up your withdrawal as far as I've learned, or sweating. The pain on day 3 to 5 or 6 is intense. If you can take one, maybe a Tylenol or Advil is a good idea. Probably need a whole bunch of them, but maybe your doctor has already given you some type of agent for the withdrawal. If you can stand days 3 to 5, you'll make it through. In my case, it would last anywhere from 120 to 160 hours. That's the acute phase for a short, like oxycodone, short-acting oxycodone. Before the end of the acute phase of the withdrawal. If you can strategically fill in this time with whatever means to get you through, you'll beat it. Here's how I beat mine. These are some tips and tricks I used myself over the years. Because of the amount of time I spent in opioid withdrawal, I knew roughly when certain symptoms would arrive. After suffering many withdrawals, I learned how to fill the time in so I could pass the time. If you think about it, 120 to 160 hours really isn't that much time if you think about it. And that's a reason I did them acutely, because I knew they wouldn't last long and I wouldn't get a seizure like you probably would if you did acute benzo withdrawal. Compared to other drugs like benzos, which can be months for the acute phase, The first thing I suggest is buying Tylenol or Advil if you can afford it. Buy a heating pad or Epsom salts for your bath. If you're a smoker like I was, I guess buy cigarettes. They did intensify my withdrawal, in all honesty. They might come in handy though, if it gets you through. Be careful of the sugar you're eating because this will intensify your withdrawal and what people call akathisia. I guess you call it withdrawal akathisia. Caffeine and sugar can worsen your symptoms. Caffeine. Comfort foods can be a good thing as well. Whatever gets you through. Sorry, I keep repeating myself. Taking a bath can't be underestimated. I have adhesive retinoiditis, and I can tell you a bath is like a healing thing. The hot or warm bath can help release muscle tension and pass the time, so I'd put Epsom salts in there if you can. The most helpful tool by far I had was music. That I have is music. Nothing beats music. Sometimes I would put on sad music and it could help me cry if I needed to release my stress. If you have a partner, then massage, sex. If you're alone, masturbate. Sorry, but what else are you gonna do? One way I passed my time strategically was to count the time with tools. I would set up movies, TV series, music. This is what I did before my withdrawal. If you can stand watching television or movies, you can withdraw strategically to pass the time. For me, music was a no-brainer. Look at it this way. If you listen to 120 one-hour CDs, then you're already through the acute part of your withdrawal. I literally counted minutes on paper. Minutes, half hours, hours. I would write down half hours and minutes at a time so I could cross them out. Every half hour that went by, I would just, take it off like that. That might sound desperate to you, but not when you're in that state. If you don't take sleeping medication, maybe your doctor can help you find something for the short term that's safe. Finding a way to count down the time is invaluable if you need a way out. It will keep your mind somewhat busy if you can try and focus on it. Make sure to eat and drink. Make sure to drink. Make sure to replace the water that you lose through your sweat and urination. Eat what you can to keep your energy up. You'll need the energy. Withdrawal from the longer acting opiates can be upwards of 2 weeks like methadone. Holy cow, man, the back pain that it gave me. Methadone was a hard withdrawal to pass through, but I used the exact same measures. Very long withdrawal. When I got to the end of the acute phase, it felt so good. It feels so good. You know it's over. The waves of restlessness are intolerable for me. In respect of ferocity of withdrawal, the opiates were harder than benzos, but lasted a much shorter period. Don't get me wrong, benzos can be that way. I found benzo withdrawal harder because of the number of simultaneous symptoms and its longevity. If you're in the spot of having to stop your drug, employing these methods might save your life. Learn to fill your time in with the most interesting things you can find, like music and movies. A friend, a counselor, whomever you talk to. Call a crisis line if you have to. I did in my darkest times. They're not going to send anyone after you. You can just call it and talk to people. Just some words of advice about any extra medications given to help the withdrawal, such as Suboxone, buprenorphine, or sleep aids. Have a plan in place so you can stop them and not get hooked on those. So people move from opiates to Suboxone, buprenorphine, and then they end up hooked on that. It's better than nothing, right? Than going out and abusing OxyContin and all that type of stuff, but they have their problems too, because it defeats the purpose. It all depends on your needs. If you're hopelessly addicted to pain meds, that's a good option. If you don't abuse it, that is. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, my diagnosis for pain, I'm not sure, I believe I said the name wrong in my last videos. It's not called nisoplastic, it's called nosoplastic. It's a new diagnosis, started in 2017. I don't know, maybe they were having trouble with diagnosing people with CRPS-like symptoms, and so that's a new diagnosis since 2017. My book that I read aloud, I'm on part 36 of 47. I've gone over my book now. This is the fourth time, as my fingers hurt a lot, so I'm guessing my book will be ready probably in 2 months. I'm almost done. When I go over this the last time is when I'm gonna read over my whole book and see and correct the small mistakes. So if you're interested in buying my book, it will be on Amazon shortly anyways, but I don't want to rush myself, so JK about your shoulder. Sorry that happened, man. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Do you know what that's from? Do you know what movie that's from? Tell me. Anyways, thanks for watching my video. It's not your fault.